Someone has broken into the national bank.
But the hacker group called Anonymous,
A 21st century thief breaking into files, not into metal safes.
was secretly listening and recording. How did that happen?
The biggest cyber attack on corporation was unfolding. For a period of 6 months, an unknown hacker group was terrorizing the internet. Many companies were under threat. Copyright website affiliated with Motion Picture Association of America, the recording industry, the British photographic industry, and even law firms were under siege from those attacks. But the biggest and yet to be recorded attack took place on December 8, 2010. A non-profit media organization and publisher, WikiLeaks, known for publishing classified documents and was a platform for whistleblowers, came under threat to stop publishing secret US diplomatic cables. In response to this threat, corporations such as Amazon, PayPal, Bank of America, MasterCard, and Visa were ordered to freeze their customer donations to WikiLeaks. Since WikiLeaks relied on donation, it affected its operation. In response to this, the hacker group launched what is known as a DDoS attack against PayPal and Post Finance. A denial of service attack known as DDoS is an attack aimed at disrupting the service of a host connected to a network, basically flooding the website with many fake requests and rendering it unable to respond to real requests. The very same DDoS attack brought down both MasterCard and Visa. The attack cost a substantial amount that had been rumored to be around $30 million. The attack of this magnitude was never seen before. It put a lot of corporations on a chokehold, worried that they might be next. Everyday individuals fell victims to cybercrimes, from phishing scams to pop-up ads. But the real uproar came forth when normal everyday people took forth their power and realized the necessity of free speech. Cyber attacks gained momentum with the rise of internet usage by everyday people. But the most popular hacker group, called Anonymous, saw its exponential growth and rise during the 2000s. A small community of individuals who collaborated on pranks and memes on 4chan subconsciously created the biggest cyber threat in America, if not the whole world.
We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
The rise of internet usage, it led to the rise of Web 1.0, where it mainly consisted of static web pages that were primarily read-only and were rarely updated. It limited the interaction between users. Fun examples of this could be Yahoo Directory, which was a curated directory of websites during the transition to Web 2.0. The drivers of change improved the web technologies, where it enabled more interactive websites. This shift towards a user-generated content and community-driven sites encouraged greater participation. Early 2003, a 15-year-old boy named Christopher Pold, who went by the pseudonym Moot, created a platform which was inspired by his interest in Japanese culture, especially anime and manga. He initially wanted to create a similar space to the Japanese image board 2channel, where it had interest in anime and other related topics. The only downside was that 2channel at the time was in a foreign language that he didn't understand, so he designed 4channel to cater for English-speaking fans of anime. But unbeknownst to him, he would be liable for the rise of the biggest hacker group. 4chan was intended as a platform for free expression where users could post anonymously without the need for user accounts. This encouraged open discussions and creativity. 4chan was characterized by two boards, the A board for general anime fans and the B board, which was a bit darker yet interesting and was also known for its troll-driven user base, where everything and anything could be said, anonymously of course. Notable examples of trolls are Pepe the Frog, which was created by Matt Faree. Users on the B-board and other forums chose it to represent a wide range of emotions and eventually became associated with the controversial and extremist content. The second notable troll was Rickrolling, where users were tricked into clicking a link that leads to Rick Astley's 1987 music video. The Masked Rattler is also one troll that led to major controversy within the B forum. Users would pretend to be masked figures who would rat out users who broke certain rules within the board. This prank was meant to create confusion and fear. It later played into a chaotic and unpredictable nature, which contributed to its reputation for fostering disruptive behavior. Although not a troll in itself, users on 4chan, especially on B, would use the idea of being anonymous to their advantage. Users posted on the forum without identifying themselves, which made it easy for the group to act collectively without individual attribution. They used the term anonymous to represent themselves online, basically making use of the default ID. The roots began to thicken, and users saw this as an opportunity not only to do online pranks and send each other memes, but as a chance to have their voices heard. Swatting took place, an illegal act of making a false report to emergency services that provoked police response to unsuspecting person's address. Its main goal was to cause disruptions. Several swatting incidents have been traced back to users on the B board. The community felt a taste for disruption and wanted more, so they were set to get their next big victim. Who else but the most controversial church, known as the Church of Scientology.
It boasts some of the most famous people on the planet, claims to be capable of curing drug addiction, and says that following its teachings will lead to a life of success and fulfillment. And yet, despite these promises, Scientology remains an organization mired in controversy.
It's no secret that the Church of Scientology was and will be on the receiving end of criticism. A lot of people fail to understand the relationship between money and the church. Many criticize that the church demands significant financial contribution from its members for courses and other services. Some former members provide forth allegations of physical and emotional abuse within the church, but one noticeable figure is its affiliation with high-profile celebrities. The public is of the idea that the church uses the influence of these celebrities to enhance and promote its agenda. Amongst all of this, Anonymous was watching and waiting from the shadows. On January 2008, a video of a prominent member of the church was leaked. That person was none other than Tom Cruise. He was directly seen and heard discussing secrets teaching of the church. Gawker, which was the website that leaked the video, started getting legal threats from the church, forcing them to remove the video. Let's just say Anonymous didn't like that, so they launched an operation called Operation Chenology as a response. It started with DDoS attacks, where Anonymous put attacks on the church's website which caused temporary outages and disruptions. If that wasn't enough, Anonymous followed with multiple prank calls to the church's call center. The prank calls were so severe it led to the church resorting to disconnecting their lines for several days. Anonymous organized and participated in peaceful protests outside the church's locations. Many people took to the streets to protest wearing Guy Fawkes masks to protect their identity, but also as a symbol for Anonymous. When this caught on, it led to the significant attention from the media, especially with regards to how the church was concealing certain information. In response to this, the church denounced Anonymous as a group of cyber terrorists. They later accused Anonymous of harassment and sought legal action against some of the individuals who were involved in the attack. Operation Chanology marked a significant moment in the history of online activism. This campaign demonstrated how digital activism could be mobilized against organizations that engaged in censorship. This marked the beginning of something greater. After the successful run with the church, Anonymous was craving for more, so it later in 2008 launched Project Skynet, which was a global operation aimed at countries like China and Iran. This campaign aimed at providing tools and methods to users in order to help them bypass internet censorship. It gave users access to block the websites and information in countries with restrictive internet policies. With the rise of internet file sharing, it saw a staggering increase in anti-piracy laws and litigations. Basically, media companies would have law firms send out letters that demanded payment to those suspected of file sharing. This later landed on Anonymous' radar because Anonymous viewed this action as predatory and unfair to individuals, and believed that it was a way to exploit and generate revenue rather than the actual protecting of intellectual property. So Anonymous launched several DDoS attacks on websites of law firms involved in anti-piracy litigations, and sometimes even doing data leaks where classified data of law firms were exposed to the general public. This was known as Operation Bailout. With so much public awareness, it caught the interest of a woman named Gabriella Coleman, whose work focused on the interaction of digital culture and technology. She was a big follower of the group and often did extensive research on Anonymous. Her work even helped some FBI agents catch certain members of Anonymous. More on that later. As the rise of Anonymous took center stage, it brought a lot of attention from law enforcement. 2008, an FBI agent named Christopher Tarbell was appointed to oversee and monitor Anonymous. Gabrielle and Christopher were one of the first set of individuals who took deep interest on Anonymous. Somehow they knew that the group was only getting started and they were about to cause more damage and harm. The author Coleman would later state in her book that Anonymous has become more than just a group of hackers. It is a cultural phenomenon that represents the power of collective in the digital age. Well, that statement proved to be true because later Anonymous was planning its biggest and yet ambitious attack. The plan was straightforward: to get global attention. They had to attack someone with public status or maybe political influence. So Anonymous put together a team to carry out this campaign. Amongst that was a son of a Democratic Tennessee state legislator named David Kernel. Kernel was a 20-year-old self-taught hacker who was big on freedom of expression and an activist against censorship. The subsequent attack was motivated by a combination of political and personal reasons rather than a coordinated effort by Anonymous. In September 2008, a political figure fell victim to Anonymous. Sarah Palin was a Republican vice presidential candidate who was running alongside Senator John McCain. Clearly, Anonymous had a plausible reason for the attack. This attack would clearly put them on the map. Members of Anonymous, led by David Kernel, managed to hack into Sarah's personal Yahoo email account. This hack managed to give Anonymous access to private emails, contacts, and photos which were later publicly released. Clearly, this was a huge security breach for someone who is a political figure. The prime hacker David Kernel later stated that he used very simple password recovery method to gain access to Sarah's account. After gaining access, he posted some of the content on the 4chan message board which led to the widespread on the internet. Many viewed this as a politically motivated attack given Sarah's prominent role in the 2008 election. Her conservative views on issues like abortion, gun rights, and her criticism of Obama's campaign subsequently made her a target for those who opposed her political stance. By looking at the leaked information from Sarah's email, the hackers' aim was to try and embarrass her or undermine her credibility during the crucial final weeks of election campaign. As we all know that the anonymous community consisted of many talented hackers, the only way to make your name is by doing something outrageous. What David Kennel did really cemented him as a pro-hacker within the community. His successful hack exposed the vulnerability of public figures, which sent a message about the risks of inadequate digital security. The attack didn't go unnoticed. Since a very popular and well-connected individual was publicly embarrassed, the officials were on the hunt for whoever was responsible. The Secret Service, together with the FBI, tracked the IP address used to access Sarah's email account. The IP was later linked to the internet service provider that served David Kennel's residence. Once the IP address was identified, the authorities obtained a search warrant for Kennel's apartment and computer. In the search, they found evidence of the hack on Kennel's computer, including the internet history that showed he had accessed the Yahoo password recovery page for Sarah's account. With this overwhelming evidence against Kennel, on October 7, 2008, he was indicted by the federal grand jury on charges related to identity theft, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice. The grand jury found him guilty on 2 accounts. He was sentenced to 1 year in federal prison in November 2010. Kennel's father, being the state legislator, raised suspicions amongst the members of the public and the media that Kennel might have received preferential treatment. There were concerns that his father's political influence could have swayed the outcome of the trial or affected the severity of the charges. Though one of their own was apprehended, it didn't stop the movement. Anonymous continued with its objective. Next on the list was Zimbabwe. Anonymous launched a broader campaign against the country on reasons over human rights abuse, censorship, and political situation under the rule of then-President Robert Mugabe. His rule was accused of silencing dissenting voices, limiting press freedom, and using state resources to maintain power. Operation Africa was formed. Anonymous carried out a DDoS attack which overwhelmed the government's website and rendered them inaccessible. Even though the attack did not bring any significant disruptions, but it did help raise awareness about political situations in Zimbabwe and the human rights issue. Operation Africa targeted several countries including Sudan, Uganda, Rwanda, and South Africa, but the most notable attack was on Nigeria. Anonymous targeted websites and systems of multinational oil companies operating in Nigeria. This included major players like Shell and Chevron. They were accused of contributing to severe environmental degradation, particularly in the Niger Delta region, where oil spills, gas flaring, and other environmentally harmful practices had devastating effects on the local community. Media leaks expose corrupt practices, unethical behavior, and extend environmental damage caused by these companies. The attack wasn't only on big corporations but also span throughout the security forces. Anonymous also targeted the Nigerian police and military website. The attacks were motivated by reports on human rights abuse by security forces, including extrajudicial killings, torture, and brutal suppression of protests. This attack sought to draw attention to the economic inequalities of Nigeria, where the wealth generated by oil industry has often failed to translate into broader economic development or improvement of living standards for the majority of the population. Really, the method used by Anonymous were unorthodox, but they've proven to be effective in the idea of uprooting any form of unfair treatment or censorship that the world was aiming to impose on the general public.
That breaking news, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange arrested in London. After 7 years of asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy, the Ecuadorian government released Assange to British authorities, and he could now face charges in the US.
An Australian journalist programmer who was influenced by the ideology of anarchism, a deep believer of transparency and free access to information, was in the process of creating an organization that would flip the information society on its head. That young journalist was Julian Assange. He firmly believed that exposing government and corporate secrets was essential for holding power to account and promoting justice. WikiLeaks date back to the mid-2000s, but it was formally launched on December 2006. Assange and his collaborators designed a site to allow for secure and anonymous submissions of documents. WikiLeaks' major leak happened in 2007, where the release implicated the corruption within the Kenyan government. Surely corruption within the African context is no shocker, but the release quickly established WikiLeaks as a controversial and influential player in global politics. WikiLeaks shifted its focus to the United States. Its biggest leak was on US diplomatic cables. The cables were released in 2010 and consisted of well over 250,000 diplomatic documents sent between USA and its embassies. The documents span from 1966 to 2010. In more detail, diplomatic cables are confidential communications sent between countries' foreign missions, mainly embassies and consulates. These cables typically include reports on political developments, negotiations, assessments of foreign leaders, and strategies for diplomacy. A US Army intelligence analyst, Chelsea Manning, downloaded the files while serving in Iraq, and then gave them to WikiLeaks, where it started releasing them on collaboration with several major international newspapers. These media outlets were given advance to the cables and worked with WikiLeaks to analyze and publish the most newsworthy documents. The release of the cables caused embarrassment and strained relations between US and numerous countries. Many governments were angered by the exposure of sensitive discussions. The whistleblower Chelsea Manning was arrested and later sentenced to 35 years in prison for her role in the leak, but her sentence was later commuted by President Barack Obama after she served 7 years. As for WikiLeaks, its reputation peaked, but later led to legal battles and political pressure on Julian Assange. WikiLeaks released another yet horrific video on April 2010, where it showed US military Apache helicopter attack in Baghdad, Iraq on July 2007. The video was part of a larger set of classified material leaked by Chelsea Manning. The video shows the Apache helicopter crew identifying a group of men on the ground, some of whom were thought to be armed. The crew requested and received permission to engage the group. The helicopter opened fire and shot the men on the ground after mistaking them for insurgents. After the initial attack, a van arrived on the scene to help the wounded. The crew then again misidentified the van of occupants as insurgents attempting to take the weapons, so they opened fire and shot again. The attack resulted in the death of at least 12 people, including 2 journalists. After WikiLeaks' release, it was accompanied by an analysis suggesting that US military had violated rules on engagement and that the killings were unlawful. The US military defended the action of the crew, stating that the attack was carried out according to the rules of engagement and they believed that the men were insurgents. With all the uproar happening, the US military wanted someone to blame, who other than Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. Department of Justice initiated criminal investigations into Assange and WikiLeaks. It looked at putting pressure on anyone who was involved with WikiLeaks or Julian Assange. Since WikiLeaks relied solely on donations from members, companies like Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal cut their connection by stopping the proceeds donations to WikiLeaks as an attempt to cripple the organization. But Anonymous came in for the rescue and launched Operation Payback as a solidarity campaign with WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. The Operation Payback succeeded in disrupting the website for its target, drawing media attention to the cause of WikiLeaks. The attack caused temporary outages and were a form of digital protest against what was perceived as unjust treatment of WikiLeaks. Operation Payback was a success in fighting off the corporation. It proved to be ineffective in Julian Assange's case. Assange was facing legal battles that tried to discredit him. Assange lived in Ecuadorian embassy for about 7 years in fears of being extradited to Sweden, where he'd face sexual assaults allegations. But his real fight was the US extradition because he was facing a prison sentence of about 175 years, based on 18 criminal charges that would have been placed on him if he was ever extradited back to the US. And a prominent leader and member of LASEC made a fatal mistake when he briefly logged into an online chat room without masking his IP address. This notorious slip-up allowed the FBI to trace his location to an apartment in New York City. The hacker is none other than Hector Monsegar, but online he went by the pseudonym Cebu. To give context on Cebu, he grew up in a tough neighborhood on the east side of Manhattan. As a teenager, he developed the interest in computers as a way to escape from his circumstances. He quickly became skilled in hacking, and his early hacking activities were largely focused on typical exploits such as defacing websites and stealing data. During the 2000s, Cebu fully embraced the hacktivism ethos and became the member of Anonymous. He quickly rose to prominence within Anonymous due to his technical expertise and leadership qualities. He participated in various high-profile operations, including the attacks on government websites. Early 2011, Cebu with other skilled hackers decided to form a splinter group called the LALSEC, or LALS Security. While Anonymous focused on political-motivated operations, LALSEC was driven by a mix of ideologies and desires. LALSEC activities were characterized by high-profile attacks on a wide range of targets, including Sony Pictures and even the CIA. The group often publicly taunted its victims and announced its exploit on social media. It all came crashing down when the FBI raided his apartment. Once he was identified, they began to build a case against him. With the overwhelming evidence against him, he was facing a lengthy prison sentence. So Cebu was given an ultimatum to either work with the FBI or be sent to prison. Cebu chose to cooperate with authorities. He began to be an informant for the FBI, helping them identify and apprehend other members of LALSEC and Anonymous. From June 2011 to March 2012, Cebu continued to operate with LALSEC, but he was actually working under the direction of the FBI. He provided valuable intelligence that led to the arrest of several key hackers. While this was happening, the biggest joint campaign between Anonymous and LALSEC was conspiring. Stratfor, short for Strategic Forecasting Incorporation, was a private intelligence and geopolitical analyst firm based in Austin, Texas. The hack involved the breach of Stratfor systems, which led to the theft of sensitive information, including emails, client details, and credit card information. In February 2012, WikiLeaks began publishing the internal emails stolen from Stratfor in series known as the Global Intelligence File. Those emails revealed the inner workings of the firm, including its dealings with major corporations, government agencies, and other entities. The content of the emails caused significant embarrassment and controversy as they exposed sensitive communication and insight into Stratfor intelligence gathering activities. The FBI launched an investigation into Stratfor hack. Since a prominent member, Sabu, was the informant, his cooperation led to the arrest of hackers involved in the Stratfor breach. But all the other hackers were just small fry. The FBI wanted the big fish to send the message within the hacking community. Let's just say Sabu gave them their target. Jeremy Hammond, a prominent member of Anonymous, was identified as the member who executed the Stratfor breach. Hammond remained in contact with Sabu, who was still posing as a fellow hacktivist. Unaware of Sabu's cooperation with the FBI, Hammond discussed his activities and plans with him. Sabu in turn relayed the information to the FBI, effectively guiding law enforcement to Hammond. While Hammond was skilled in covering his tracks, he made several operational security mistakes that ultimately contributed to his capture. Use of his pseudonym across different platforms and operations made it easier for law enforcement to link him to various hacking activities. March 2012, the FBI raided Jeremy Hammond's apartment in Chicago, Illinois, and arrested him. The raid was part of a coordinated operations targeting several members involved in Anonymous and LALZAC. Following his arrest, Hammond was held in custody as he awaited trial. In May 2013, he pleaded guilty to one count of violating the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act for his role in the Stratfor hack. Hammond admitted to hacking into multiple systems and stealing large amounts of data, which he then passed to WikiLeaks. In November 2013, Hammond was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison, the maximum sentence allowed under a plea deal. The seriousness of the sentence was partially due to the scope of the damage caused by the hack and the political motivation behind his actions. Hammond's case became a cause of caliber amongst activists and supporters of the digital freedom, who argued that his actions were a form of civilian disobedience aimed at exposing corruption and government overreach. Sabu's role as an informant caused deep divisions within the hacker community. Some viewed him as a traitor, while others saw his cooperation as an understandable decision given the circumstances.